Okay. So in July uh, of 2011, I read. How many did I read? This is going to be a longer video. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those were graphic novels, and 2 of those were books. So it's not quite as many as it seems. Now, I did a previous video where I talked about the Goon, and so you can refer back to that. This is the Goon Volume 2, My Murderous Childhood and Other Grievous Yarns by Eric Powell. There might be a story that's by someone else. He sometimes has other contributors, at least to the trade paperbacks, and sometimes to individual issues. But it's been long enough, I don't really remember. I could look that up. I think I might have gotten confused. I think the first video I did with the Goon, I said that was about him meeting Frankie, but I'm pretty sure Volume 2 is where he meets Frankie when he's a little kid and then gets him to join his gang, and the Goon's like 10 years old or something. He's not very old. And he's taken over this gang. I don't remember the name of the guy that he took it over from, but he did that after his Aunt Kizzy was murdered in front of him by this guy. So he killed that guy and took over his gang, and Laszlo, that's his name. So he took over after he killed him and said that he was going to be in charge of that gang until Laszlo came back, which he never does, because he's dead. So that's the main thrust of that story. I think that's before they have anything with the zombie priest, who's the main antagonist throughout the series. And it's just a couple of goofy, disturbing stories about growing up in Ruination Street? I don't remember the name of the street where he lives, but it's just supposed to be like Chicago or New York or something. And then next I read Scalped Volume 1, Indian Country, and Scalped Volume 2, Casino Boogie. That's by Jason Aaron, and it's illustrated by R.M. Guera. And that is a continuing series, although I think they're getting close to the end of it. Things are sort of coming to a head. And it's sort of like The Sopranos. It's a crime story, sort of film noir kind of thing that takes place on an Indian reservation, and just about all of the characters are Native American, at least part, and the main plot is about this character, Dashiell Bad Horse, or Dash, who his mom sent him away from the reservation when he was a teenager, and he ended up joining the military, and then he later he got into some sort of trouble, and the FBI, let's say it's the FBI, yeah, it's the FBI, got him working for them, so he's now going back to the reservation at the beginning of the story, and he is supposed to find some dirt on this chief there. Chief. I don't remember the name of the chief, but the chief is basically like this mafia guy who wants to start a casino that would be owned by Indians, which is, but it would be in a reservation, because usually, my understanding is Native Americans or American Indians would buy casinos, but then they would have them out of the reservation because they have a really terrible time with gambling among Native Americans, and then they have a really bad history with alcohol and drug abuse. So that's seen as really controversial because one of the things they're doing in the casino is they're going to have alcohol when Native Americans have a really bad problem with alcoholism. So, yeah, what is this? Indian Red's Chief Red Crow. I think it's Red Crow. So, Dash agrees to become basically a hitman or an enforcer for Chief Red Crow in order to get close to him so that he can catch him doing something illegal, and then the FBI can pull him in because of something that happened like 20, 30 years ago, back when, before Dash was born, that involved his mom, Chief Red Crow, and like 4 or 5 other people. That was a shootout that's supposed to be based on an actual famous case that involved the FBI that was just this horrible bloodbath. So that is the basic story of that, and it's pretty hardcore. I would not recommend it for people that are easily offended by violence or sex or swearing or drugs, because it's got all of those. And I feel like sometimes they go a little bit over the edge with that, and it almost feels exploitative. But generally, I feel like they're trying to do a good job presenting what is a really big problem in the reservations, which is them being sort of trapped in this hopeless situation where they want to hold on to their culture, but it seems like in the process of doing that, it leads to all these negative things, and when they are more integrated, they have a much better chance of succeeding and not, succumbing to drugs and prostitution and all these sort of terrible things. So they combine that with actually a pretty strong, pretty involving crime story, and I feel like it's something that happens pretty naturally instead of being sort of forced into this shape. But that's my impression. So after I read the 2 volumes of Scalped, I read The Last Man by Mary Shelley, which I believe the graphic novel Why the Last Man by Pia Guera and Brian K. Vaughan, I believe it was based partially on that and a couple other things. And it is one of the very earliest post-apocalyptic novels, although, good grief, so much of it takes place before there's an actual apocalypse, and the title's a bit misleading. I'm going to give a little bit away in this, so spoiler alert. Mary Shelley comes up with great ideas, and she has some good writing, but she is not at all succinct. Now, some people have said that the problem with that is due to her husband, Percy Shelley, who was a poet and encouraged her to be expansive in her texts. I don't know if that's true, but she certainly did that to the hilt. It's a really interesting thing just in terms of the concept. It's about this guy who grows up kind of poor and kind of shiftless and reckless, and he has it in his head to get revenge on this prince, I guess, or he's somehow nobility, but then that guy finds out that something terrible had happened to his father, and that's why he's gone through all these difficult times, and so he sort of takes him under his wing, and he has a sister who I don't really remember the plot too terribly well, but the culmination really is in this disease that sort of comes out of nowhere that no one really knows. It's some sort of plague that slowly is working its way through Europe, and the story takes place in England because Mary Shelley was a British writer. And it's just sort of slowly, the number of people in the story gets whittled down until there's just one person left, which is why it's called The Last Man. But it takes such a long time to get there, and it's something I'm sort of glad I read just for context's sake, but I can't say it's a book that I enjoyed reading terribly. After that, I read The Goon, Volume 4, Virtue and the Grim Consequences thereof. There's a big pivotal book in The Goon called Chinatown. I believe that is after Virtue and the Grim Consequences thereof, but it's sort of a standalone thing, kind of like in Fables you have The Last Castle, I think it's called, which it takes place chronologically within the series, but it was not something that was released with issues. It was a standalone original graphic novel that was part of the overall thing. So I don't actually remember what happens in Virtue and the Grim Consequences thereof. I can go back and double check and give you more information. And that was Eric Powell and Thomas Lennon. I think probably it would have been half and half in terms of the story. Eric Powell writes and illustrates and does the covers for most of The Goon. It's almost entirely his thing. After that, I read River Mark by Patricia Briggs. I think I mentioned Patricia Briggs in a previous one. Yeah, Wolfsbane. So this is her main series, or the one that she's better known for, about Mercy Thompson, who is this shape changer that owns a mechanic shop, and she was raised by werewolves, and there's vampires and ghosts and all sorts of things in it. In this volume, this is the most recent one, she has become the mate of the alpha, where, like dog packs and wolf packs, they have alphas and they have betas and all sorts of hierarchies within the werewolf society, organization, whatever. So she is made into the local alpha, Adam something, I don't remember his last name, but he and she are on their honeymoon in this one, and they go to Seattle, maybe? The whole thing takes place in Washington, so it might actually be they go to Oregon, but a lot of it is her finding out about her Native American father and her ancestry there, and coming to terms with that, and that's the main part of it. A lot of the other stories have several interlocking stories happening at the same time. That one was pretty much just everything that happens while she's on her honeymoon, investigating Native American art and artifacts. And Patricia Briggs is really good about researching her books. Um, I don't feel at all like she just does something to toss it away and like, well, I've covered that subject now moving on to the next one. It all feels very cohesive and very organic, and um, I can tell that she has a lot of affection for her characters, and that makes her a great writer. And for the world also, but it's really very much a character.